All right, Scott, welcome to Adirondack Bigfoot. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you jumping on. I know we've chatted a little bit before, but I'm excited to really hear your experiences that you've had here in the Adirondack Park and just outside the Adirondack Park, but close enough, right? Um, so if you want to just give your little introduction, you could share whatever you'd like to share, and you don't have to share anything you don't want to share. So it's up to you.
Okay, great. Well, hey, thank you, John, for having me on Adirondack Bigfoot. I appreciate that and taking the interest in what I've experienced over the last uh, 40 years. Um, no, just a little background on me. I just, grew up in country boy, grew up in West Galway, New York, and
Mm,
the Adirondacks were always I considered my place to be that I like to we would go to. My parents would always take us camping, Wells
hmm.
and in Northampton.
Yeah.
But and then later on, as in my teens, going up to Minerva. The Adirondacks have a special place in my heart, and
Yeah, yeah. Me too.
so
Me too. A lot of people,
a lot
everybody
of
I
people.
talk to in the Adirondack Park, um, truly have a connection to it. It's very interesting. When you think about like the wild of Maine and Alaska and northern Washington State and Canada, we have that right here in the Adirondack Park.
Sure
We have
do.
those same experiences. We have moose.
Yeah.
Even though some folks may not believe in moose, right? I'm still skeptical because I haven't seen one. I did see about 7 deer today, run across the street as I was driving across the Adirondack Park. Um, so I know you've shared a few experiences with me. And the camp one the most recent?
The Northampton one happened this year in September.
Okay, good, good. So let's leave that one for last because
Okay.
I have some different thoughts on what I'm gonna do. You might get a double whammy, two videos. So we may get a video
Okay.
for the camp, uh, and I'll take the vocals out of this and I'll move them to that video. And then we'll also have the podcast type video too.
Sure.
So you may have hit the Bigfoot lottery here, man.
I guess so. I guess so.
Yeah. But yeah, so what if you wanted to go ahead and kick it off with the first one and I always just like to share so the viewers really like to know details. So if there's anything that you think of or anything that just grabs your interest or something you didn't really think about before or something you'd like to elaborate on, feel free. Take your time. We're in no rush. Um and appreciate you sharing, you
Well,
know?
thank you for that, John. I
Yeah,
appreciate that. Well, I'll take my time and
sure.
try to be as detailed as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Um, well, I grew up in West Galway,
Hmm.
and it's a one blinking light little. I guess you want maybe a hamlet or something like that.
Yeah.
It's very small.
Where is it located? What's close to it?
What's close to it? Hageman, New York is
Hmm.
close to it. Galway is 7 miles
Okay.
from it.
Hmm.
Perth,
Perth. Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
okay, Perth, Broad
Gotcha.
Albin,
Yep.
kind of in that area. Not too far from Mayfield,
Right.
20 minutes,
Gotcha.
Um, so when I'm going back, when I was 10, so I'm kind of aging myself here. I'm going back 40 years, you know, and 41 years. And
We're not too far off, just so you know there, Scott.
okay. So we grew up at that time. It was my uncle that who we lived next to owned a farm.
Yep.
Surrounding the farm was woods.
Hmm.
And in that area, it's either woods or farmland. back then. Today it's a little bit different. It's more residential. The woods are still there, but where a lot of the farmers have sold off their
Right.
lands and sublot, turned it into sublots, and
Yeah.
there's more houses there now than when 40 years ago it was just farmland and woods.
Okay.
And we lived in a trailer that was two trailers that were combined into one,
Mm-hmm.
and we lived on my uncle's land, uh, and so but that was on Calderwood Road. It was our house, my uncle's farmhouse, and as you were going down into West Galway,
Mm-hmm.
there was the Chuctanunda Stream. Then you would go up a large hill, and then you would go into the small little hamlet of West Galway.
Okay.
Maybe tops 15 houses.
Okay. Wow.
So very small. There
Right.
was one blinking light.
Mm.
There was a restaurant there. It's still there. It was called the Top Notch Tavern. That's kind of like the highlight of the whole area. But it's the rumor is, or going down through history, was that George Washington spent a night there.
Oh, okay.
So, but as we go back across the Chuctanunda and back onto our land, it was all farmland. And then behind the farmland was all woods. Across the street, a fella, his name was Dr. Kinder, and uh, it was all woods that went back to his camp.
Mm.
And that camp, the house actually belonged to the Calderwoods.
Okay.
So the house was very old. And there was an artesian well back there that fed into a sizable pond
Mm-hmm.
that he raised as his own pets, rainbow trout.
Oh, really? Wow.
Big ones. They were big. They're over 20 inches. I would even say some of them were 30. They're
Wow.
massive. He fed them dog food.
Oh,
And
jeez.
so if we were looking at it, on my side of the street was just our trailer, and then my uncle's barns and his farmhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Across the street was a field, and then just adjacent from our house was a plot of forested land.
Okay.
And along the field was where the tractors could go down. They would ride along the edge of that woodlot
Sure.
to get to the back fields. And then it was all the wooded lot, all the way down the hill, down to the Chuctanunda.
Mm.
And then if you cross the street down at the stream, that was all woods. I
Mm.
mean, and you could basically go woods all the way back. I mean, at that time, you could go back and never hit a house. I mean, you
Really?
would cross
Wow.
streets and things like that. It was sparse, and but on the Dr. Kinder side, um, there was the corner of the woodlot,
Mm-hmm.
and that was just adjacent from our house.
Okay.
And when I was 10, we would go out front to play.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, do you ever remember the Scholastic bus, the school bus, Scholastic book bus?
Yeah.
You remember them?
Yeah.
Where the bus would come in and you would fill out your order and go in. Well,
That's right.
I
Yeah.
was always big into the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, things
Yep.
like that. So anytime those things would come around, I'd always have my little checklist, and I'd either get like a little children's book on Bigfoot, and that interested me in the Loch Ness Monster,
Yeah.
and so just as where my interests started,
Sure.
as a kid.
Sure.
And I think it started with, I think with that was with Leonard Nimoy's show. If I ever forget the name of the show, but it was Leonard Nimoy had this show, and it was all about the UFOs and Loch Ness monster and
Mm-hmm.
Bigfoot.
Yeah. I
Um,
loved all those shows too.
oh well, and I believe it was probably the summer. If I was 10, it was probably 1983, summer of 1983. I remember that because there was the leaves on the trees were green, and on that corner of where the field met the woods
Right.
on the Dr. Kinder side.
Mm-hmm.
When we were playing, I mean, we weren't more than 75, 100 feet away,
Mm.
from that. But on that corner, we would be out playing in the front, my sister and I. And you always had the feeling that you were being watched.
Yeah.
And it was eerie. It
Mm.
was it was an uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, we would either go back in the house or we would go in behind the house and play,
Mm-hmm.
and but I would I started to notice that when I would look, because I could feel that what I was experiencing was coming from that corner of that woodlot.
Right.
And I started to, constantly was looking into that corner. And I started to see movement
Mm.
just on that corner, just inside the woodlot, but on that corner. And I could see something. I could never identify what it was. It was just inside that corner, and it would go from left to right,
Mm.
right to left. And the branches on the trees would move
Mm.
like it was trying to bend a branch to kind of see better, or
Right. Right.
something like that. And I found it to be really odd because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this isn't a deer, and at 10 years old, I'm like, it's not registering, it's not making sense. I'm like, because if it was a deer, they would have walked out either into the field or they would have crossed the road. It would, and the branches that were being moved were not deer height,
Right.
they were higher up. And I would even show my sister. And in fact, I called her and I said, "You remember that?" And she said, "Yeah." She goes, "You always told me, look to that corner, look to the corner." And she
Mm.
saw it too. And um, but you would see it, you could see just like the way depending upon on the way the light hit it, it was, when a deer sheds its winter fur and it's got that kind of reddish
Yeah.
kind of color to it.
Yep.
That's what it looked like.
Hmm.
But you could never make out a form. I could never see like actual legs moving. It was just something solid, and it would just go from left to right, right to left.
Wow.
And it did that for a while. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
Really? Wow.
It was like that, you know. It was creepy. I mean, to be honest with you, it was just straight up creepy
Yeah.
because it was that feeling of being watched. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like it was like a malicious feeling or anything like that. It was just a feeling of I'm being stared at,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
it was just creepy, especially when you're seeing the branches, you know, up there and they're
Yeah.
moving, and it wasn't like they were being really gentle about it. It was like they were physically moving the branch.
Mm.
So it was obvious, and maybe like almost like shaking a little bit, like
Mm-hmm.
shaking, and that continued, like I said, that continued on for a while, 2, 3 weeks at least.
Wow.
And one morning, uh, the way the trailer was set up was that I was in the far back of the trailer, and the doorway to my bedroom shot right down the hallway, which went right into the kitchen,
Yep.
and there was a window there. So when the sun would come up in the morning, the sunlight would come right down the hallway and it would just hit me right in the face. So I was always typically like the first one up.
First, yeah.
So,
That's great
and
though. That's good.
yeah,
Good positioning the way they built that house. They said, you know what? We're gonna have sun right through the entire house every morning.
every morning,
Mm-hmm.
every morning could count on it. And the thing about it was is I'm laying there in bed, and this is summertime. So my window, I had one small window, maybe 24 by 18,
Mm-hmm.
small window with the hand crank to open up the, the window.
Yep.
And so I'm laying in bed, and out of nowhere, something hit the side of the trailer
Mm.
so hard
Mm.
it shook.
Wow.
And I'm saying to myself, I said, I'm like, whoa, what was that? What was that? You
Sure.
know, and I mean, John, it hit it. I can't express how hard this thing hit it. I'll never forget it. I mean, he nailed it. And the funny thing about it is that my sister never woke up, my mother never woke up, and my father never woke up.
Wow.
None of them woke up. So,
So were
and
you already awake when that
I was
happened?
already awake.
You were already
I
awake.
was
Okay.
I was already awake. I was just
Mm.
laying in bed, and so when this thing hit the side of the house, I would instant I'm on edge because
Yeah.
something just nailed the house. And of course, we live on a farm, and we had my uncle had cows, and occasionally they would break through a fence, and you'd have to go round them up or something like that. So we were, I was not not unfamiliar with livestock,
Yep.
cows, horses, donkeys,
Right.
So when this when this thing hit the house, my window was open.
Mm-hmm.
I could hear I could hear footsteps,
Yeah.
and it wasn't a cow.
Mm-hmm.
It was like bipedal footsteps.
Right.
I can even to this day remember the thumping.
Mm.
The heavy football, boom, boom, boom.
Right.
And as it was walking down the trailer, as I'm hearing the
Oh, you're muted. You gotcha.
okay,
Yeah.
as I'm sorry about that.
That's
As
okay.
as the footsteps are coming down, they're getting louder.
Mm.
And as the footsteps are getting closer, I can hear the breathing
Mm.
because my window was open.
Right.
And it was a heavy, kind of nasally,
Mm.
kind of heavy breath is how I can explain it. I can't, I mean, it was just a really heavy, nasally like congested kind of breath.
Wow.
And and I'm hearing this as I'm hearing it as it's coming closer to my window, and I could hear the breathing. Now I'm terrified.
I bet.
10 years old. I mean, I was beside myself. I was so scared. I just took the covers, threw them up over my head
Mm.
because I didn't want to see what this thing was if it
Yeah.
decided to look in my window.
Yeah. I could picture myself being 10. That's exactly what I would do.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
from that point on, John, every night before I went to bed, I would
Mm-hmm.
pull the blinds down on that window
Sure.
because I was straight up terrified.
Yeah.
Now, when my father woke, I went right up to him. I said, Dad, didn't you hear that something hit the house?
Mm.
I go, it shook the whole house. He said, No, I didn't hear or feel anything.
Mm.
My mother said the same thing. My sister was dead to the world. She didn't hear anything. And my father said, Well, it must have been one of Uncle Adam's cows.
Mm.
I said, Dad, I don't think it was a cow. And he said, No, it was probably a cow. So I said, Okay, you
Yeah.
know. So later on, I find out no cows got out. They
Mm.
didn't break through the fences. So it wasn't that. And then I even went around the house looking for cow prints
Yeah.
to see if the cow punched through around the house.
Right.
I couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
So that in itself, and I didn't know anything about the heavy breathing. I didn't know anything about the footfalls. I was
Yeah.
10 years old. All I knew was about what some little scholastic book
Yeah.
would talk about Bigfoot. And it was always Patterson Gimlin, 1967,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of deal. Because, we're talking 1983. So
Right. Right.
as time had gone on and I was watching more and more YouTube videos
Mm-hmm.
on my, excuse me,
Yeah.
um, as I was watching videos with I don't know, like Bigfoot Society,
Sure.
um, Linda Eastburn, I think,
Mm-hmm.
or hers. I was with Terry from Bigfoot Odyssey.
Yeah.
All of those shows,
Mm-hmm.
Bigfoot Theory with Miguel. I've listened to probably hundreds and hundreds of
Great.
encounters, of
Yeah.
people, other people's experiences.
Yeah.
All of it, this stuff started to all make sense
Mm-hmm.
because I'm listening to other people talking about their trucks getting hit, their houses getting hit, their
Yep.
campers getting hit, the log
Mm-hmm.
cabins getting hit.
Yep.
All of this stuff, and like they explicitly explained how hard this thing hit their homes or
Yeah.
campers or RVs or whatever.
Yep.
And it instantly brought me back to 1983. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that kind of fits the bill here.
Yeah.
And then I'm listening to other encounters of people talking about hearing the breath.
Yep.
They can hear it breathing, the heavy, gnarly, kind of congested, kind of heavy, deep breathing. I'm piecing all this together like a puzzle. And I'm
Yeah.
like, there's that. Then I'm listening to encounters. They could hear the footfalls, the
Mm.
boom, the thump, bump, thump. I'm putting it all together and I'm like, maybe it was,
Yeah. That's right.
maybe it was, and then listening to the other encounters
Mm-hmm.
about them looking through the trees and moving branches and
Yeah,
just staying outside of visible sight.
sure.
And then also, too, that they take an interest in children.
Yep.
They find children entertaining, maybe, I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
all of this stuff, those instances all started piling on, and I'm putting it all together. And the
Yeah,
more and more that I was, the more and more encounters that I heard that kind of correlated with what I experienced, I'm like, the potential's there.
that's right. Yeah. And you're not alone, just so you know. Most everybody I talk to, it's the same, had some sort of unexplained experience and a lifelong amount of research later they start to come up with some possibilities, right?
Yeah.
And Bigfoot's a possibility, and it could be anything. It could be anything else. Could be a possibility too. There's multiple possibilities, but when you start connecting the dots and adding up the pieces to the puzzle, you get a much clearer picture. And that's what you seem to be painting for me is there's a Bigfoot at your house.
I believe, I firmly believe that it was. I mean, because all these people that experience this stuff,
Hmm.
listen, you got all the naysayers and everything like that. Listen, everybody can't be a liar.
That's right.
That's statistically impossible.
That's right.
So, there has to be some truth. And, by listening to all these different encounters and experiences of other people, and you start correlating it with your own,
Yep.
and you have to take for what their story is as true, because it's their experience. You can't take away their experience, you
No,
know,
absolutely
for,
not.
for what it is. So it's like, are you gonna go up and tell, if my uncle went up to me and told me that story, am I going to sit there and tell my uncle or my father that they're a liar?
Yeah,
No, I'm not going to tell them that they're a liar because that was their experience. I'm going to
that's right.
believe what they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, of
So,
course.
like with all these other people, I mean, doctors and
Mm-hmm.
police officers. I mean, they've got a lot to lose, especially if they're still active in their careers,
Mm-hmm.
as to what they can, they can lose a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what do they have to gain from it?
Right.
Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
What do I have to gain from this? Absolutely nothing.
Nope.
So it all comes together, and it's just like when you're listening to all these experiences.
I think what you have is a couple puppies that are excited, but
Yeah,
I'm
no, I
surprised
got
mine haven't
it.
started going at it yet either. But um, yeah, but what you're doing is you're sharing your experience, right? And that's given other folks a voice to hear to help confirm the experiences that they've had too. So it helps them put their pieces together. So I really think, overall we're helping the Bigfoot community understand the unexplained, right? I had a
Yeah,
couple
that's my hopes.
conversations. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's because I held on to this for 40 years, John.
Yeah,
I mean, I just recently told this to my father,
yeah,
of what I was seeing across our road
yeah.
on that corner. And it wasn't that he didn't shoot me down.
Good. I was going to ask you, how'd that conversation go?
He
So
didn't he
because
didn't shoot.
maybe there was something he came across unexplained and didn't say anything.
No, well, that's funny you mentioned that because he maybe about 2 years ago, behind just where we grew up,
Hmm.
that Chuctanunda stream was what goes through right behind my father's house.
Right.
And there's 3 ponds back there
Oh,
that Dr. Kinder would let us fish at. It had
hmm.
bass and bluegill in it.
Nice.
And but it was all forested. It's all forested. And a lot of pine.
Yeah.
And he was mentioning that, a couple of years ago, he was out back in the back of his property. There's some apple trees that have been there forever. And he was out back there doing something, and he said he heard something extremely large
Hmm.
on the other side of the Chuctanunda going through the trees.
Mm.
Didn't see it, don't know what it was.
Yeah.
He, bear possible, but
Yeah.
he heard something of size going through. So are they still there? I don't know, possibly.
Food and water source back there.
That's
That's
it.
pretty good, pretty good to know. I was having so I did spend the day in the Adirondack Park today. Um Driving across the entire Adirondack Park, which was pretty cool. But I got to talk to some pretty interesting people, and one of the conversations I continue to have over and over. I just was grabbing my map real quick here. Where Let me see here. Where am I? Where's my map? There we go. Straight over to Old Forge. So from
Yep.
Fort Ann to Old Forge, it's about a two and a
Mhm.
half hour drive, and then with
Yeah.
traffic and
Yeah.
deer crossing the road and all that craziness. But
Sure.
I had some good conversations because I hung out in Old Forge, and I hung out in Inlet for a little while too. Grabbed a cup of coffee, got some gas.
Hmm.
Of course, people see the shirt and they start talking, so it's always a good conversation starter. Um, and one of the things, and that's what I was looking up. So I wasn't doing something other than listening to you a minute ago. I was fact checking myself,
Yeah.
because we were talking about one of the women I was talking to said, "Well, are you going to go to Washington to find Bigfoot?" I said, "Why would I go
Don't
to
need to.
Washington?"
Don't need to.
I'm
You
staying.
don't need to.
I said this is Adirondack Bigfoot right here. I'm in
Yeah.
the Adirondacks. She's like, you really think we have Bigfoot in the Adirondack Park? I said we have over 200 documented witnesses and sightings in the Adirondack Park. Then I would say tons more undocumented because everyone I talk to is undocumented for the most part. Um, and then I mentioned to her, I said, "Do you know we have like 10 million there's an estimated 10 million unidentified species that are still undiscovered out there somewhere in the world.
Sure.
Every day they're discovering thousands and thousands of more species that we didn't even know existed, whether it be in a rainforest, in a normal forest, or in the dirt, or in the ocean." She was like, "Really?" So it was like, yeah, it's true. I looked this up, and that's why I was looking. So it's 8.7 million species that is undiscovered. That's estimated to be undiscovered on Earth right now. So,
Sure.
um, I'd say the odds are pretty good. When I think about just a simple fact like that, I say, yeah, well, the odds are pretty good. There's something out there that we're not sure about.
Correct. That's correct. I mean, it's it's amazing. I mean, I went to college to SUNY Plattsburgh for environmental science,
Wow,
and
great.
so we were always trudging through the Adirondacks
Hmm.
or Lake Champlain, either way. But
Yep,
it's people, one, they have to be open minded,
that's right.
and two, I think you have to have a little bit of an understanding of the natural world. You have to
Hmm.
have a little bit maybe of understanding of some ecology,
Yeah.
some
Yes.
biology,
Hmm.
and go in with an eye of skepticism,
Yeah.
and until proven,
Yes. Yes.
and that's the way that I think it should be handled,
Hmm.
is just, because, Sasquatch isn't around every tree,
That's right. Yeah.
and it's, that discovery is, there's more than enough from all of the shows that I've listened to, and there's more than enough information out there, to suggest that there is some kind of cryptid
Yeah.
Sasquatch, roaming the forests of North America.
Sure. Of
You
course.
know,
Yeah, I agree. I feel like there has to be something. And but to your point of um so I make videos, I do things on Facebook, and make posts and stuff, so I get a lot of feedback and comments. And SUNY Empire State, I just got my degree, just wrapped up for myself,
oh,
so we're
congratulations.
SUNY alumni. um I did take an ecology class too, because I was like, I
Oh,
need to learn
good.
about
Good.
it was a great, it was I wish I took more. I can put it that way,
Yeah.
because I was very interested in it. But business management is what I wrapped up. Um, so I was talking to a gentleman in the comments on one of my videos. It's out there, and he's telling me, he watched the video and he said, "Listen, I live in that area. I've hunted that area for the past 50 years, and I've never seen or heard a thing." And I said, okay. Well, other folks have, you know, and you kind of got to be open to it. And then he came back with, I'm not sure, something like that. And then I said, well, if you're not looking, you're never going to find something you're not looking for, so you got to go into it with an open mind, and he just gave me a thumbs up after that. So I think that
Yeah.
that kind of may have sparked his interest a little bit to really think about things a little different, because if you're a hunter sitting in the woods, you're thinking about hunting. What is that noise? I hope it's a deer, right?
Right.
So, yeah,
Right.
and that's it. And if something's watching you, you're not paying attention to any of that, or you're not looking at tree
Oh,
breaks or possible structures, or looking for prints, or you're sitting and you're waiting for a deer to come by.
right.
So different environment. And if that's your goal and that's your interest, then and you had no thought ever of a Bigfoot in those woods, then you would never put the dots, you'd never connect the dots.
You would never, I don't think they would ever connect the dots.
Right.
And like, even in my own experiences, I mean, I hunted all, all the way up into probably up until I was 30.
Mm,
So I was out in the woods, deer hunting, rabbit hunting, small game with rough grouse. I mean, I was doing that stuff all the time, fishing and the camping and all that stuff,
yeah.
And when you're a hunter, I mean, you're looking for signs of the deer, buck rubs, and you're
Mm-hmm.
looking for deer scat, and you're looking for the deer runs, and where they're bedding down. I mean, you're looking for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But are you looking for, a Sasquatch nest?
Right.
No.
No.
And
No.
are you looking for 18-inch footprints in the mud?
No.
No. You
No.
know,
Um, no, and of course you would blow those off as something else, right?
of course.
Yeah, I was speaking with one of my buddies, Dave I call him Dave the expert, because he's literally the expert. And one of these videos is of Dave the expert. And we actually have something planned for this Friday with a couple of us are going to jump on a call. But Dave explained to me that in order to have a Bigfoot experience, you have to be open to it. Bigfoot has to be open to you. They have to feel that you're safe or are friendly. So you can't have a gun. That's like the number one rule. So if you have a gun, you're not going to have a Bigfoot experience. Number two, video equipment, all that kind of stuff. They can sense electronics, things like that. They're not going to put themselves in that kind of scenario, right? Because if there ever was real evidence, like we could say Patty's evidence, but nobody knows, still circumstantial, right? Um, but if there was ever real evidence, like a hunter accidentally killed a Bigfoot or something happened like this, there would be a manhunt, and it wouldn't stop until they were eradicated.
Oh
So
yeah, absolutely.
it would be a major problem. So we can't, they wouldn't allow that to happen. They understand that. I'm sure they've been studying us long enough to understand and know what type of creature we are.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I mean, and with all the experiences that I've listened to
Sure.
on, YouTube channels and things like that,
Yeah.
you know, the hunter always is, you know, the one, usually their experience, if they do have one,
Hmm.
doesn't bode well,
Yeah.
for
Yes.
them.
Yes. That's right.
It doesn't bode well. There's rocks being thrown or
Yes.
trees or something in that
Hmm.
kind of nature, and same goes with fishermen.
Hmm.
And how many encounters did I listen to of guys fishing and then rocks are being thrown at their canoes, or, there's screaming and yelling going on, as like an intimidation
Right.
to, get out, I believe it's because you're threatening their food source,
Yeah. Or their
uh,
family or,
or their family or
yeah.
young ones or whatever it happens to be, and the thing is if if you never question what you hear in the woods,
Mm.
other than just passively knocking it off as, oh, that was just a branch breaking,
Right.
or, I mean, and because when I talk about my experience at Northampton, that basically will explain why and how I came to that conclusion. Because if I wasn't privy to that type of information of other people's experiences, I would have said, yeah, it was just a branch breaking,
Yeah.
or it was potentially just a branch breaking,
Right.
or potentially it was something else. When I get into that, what happened in 2024 in
Yeah.
September at Northampton.
Yeah.
But
Get into it.
it's like, if you got to
Yeah.
know, you got to know,
Hmm.
a little bit, and be open minded. If you're not open minded to it,
Right.
then you're never going to see anything, and that's where a lot of, the skeptics, it's like, if you want to be a skeptic, or, which is fine,
Yeah.
I have no problem with you being a skeptic, but
Right.
don't dismiss it without doing some of your own research and seeing what other people are witnessing and seeing and
Yeah.
hearing and smelling.
Yep.
There's all of that is involved. And it's like, how can you dismiss a hunter who's been hunting for his entire life, 30, 40 years, has this horrific experience and never goes hunting again?
Yeah.
You don't do that with a bear.
Mm-mm.
If they had an experience with a bear, they're going to go back into the woods. But something scared that hunter to the point where they gave up the thing that they loved the most, and to be out in the woods.
Yeah.
You know, so what would do that? Bear's not going to do that,
Mm-mm.
especially somebody that has a love of hunting and a love of the outdoors. So, to me, those experiences mean a lot, because especially when they say, I'll never go back in the woods again, or I'll
Mm.
never go in the woods at night, or go camping by myself,
Right.
uh, or the instance where it took this person years
Mm.
to overcome it, to finally get to the point of saying that, I'm going to go back into the woods for a little bit, and get my hobby back,
Right.
or whatever it is that they like doing.
Yeah.
It's amazing stuff.
Very
And
interesting. Yeah.
the thing is that it's not just like here in the Adirondacks. This goes from West Coast to East Coast.
Hmm.
It's throughout the whole entire country,
That's right.
and in these experiences that people are having. So
Hmm.
how can they all be fake? How can they all be hoaxes, or just somebody spinning a yarn? Sure, are there people out there doing that stuff? Yeah, there's some of them are spinning yarns, and they're just, shooting into the wind, but every one of them can't be that,
That's right.
and, dealing with all of the, the down south with the skunk ape,
Yep.
and dealing with the behaviors of the skunk ape, which I believe are different
Mm.
from the Northwest Sasquatch
Yeah.
to the Adirondack Sasquatch.
Hmm.
They're different.
Yeah.
And then if you start going into like, Louisiana and Alabama, and they start talking about the Rougarou,
Mm-hmm.
and all of these, and that's a whole set of another type of behaviors into Texas, you know, where things their behaviors are just like all over the place,
Yeah.
and I understand it. I mean, if they're anything like a human, I mean, you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what are you going to come across? You're going to come across one that's having a good day, or you're going to come across one that's not having such a great day,
Yeah.
is
Exactly.
maybe the type of experience you're going to have, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But as for me, it took a long time, especially the one I just discussed and the
Yep.
one I'm going to talk about in Minerva. It took a lot of just listening,
Mm.
just to be willing to listen
Yeah.
and be open and go in with an open uh, uh, with an open mind,
Right.
and listening to what they're having to say, you know, and it took that amount of time for me to start piecing all of this stuff together, and just like putting a puzzle together.
Right.
And that's how I put it together with my when I was 10. That's how I
Mm-hmm.
put it together when I was in my teens. And that's definitely how I put it together when I was in Northampton in September of this year.
Great. Great. Yeah. That's how are you I usually ask this at the end, but has these experience changed you at all, or do you feel like it's affected your life in any way?
The people I talk to, some people, they bust my chops, oh
Yeah.
yeah, okay, yeah, whatever, and then there's some people and they listen,
Yeah.
you know, and there's, but has it changed me? I always thought there was something. I
Yeah.
mean, it's when I first saw the Patterson Gimlin film, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at Patty walking across the riverbed there,
Mm-hmm.
stream bed.
Yeah.
I was sold right there.
Yeah.
I'm like, there is no way that is a man in a suit
I
in
don't think so.
1907.
Yeah.
There is no way, especially
Yeah.
when she has breasts and they're plainly visible.
Yeah. And I just saw a newly edited, not edited, but enhanced, technology gets better and better and better. So
Sure.
newly enhanced picture, and it got me, man. It got me.
It's like, yeah, it's like, how can that be fake?
Yeah.
And of course, you listen to Jeff Meldrum and some of the other guys that, are way above my scale,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and, when he's talking about foot morphology and, the metatarsal breaks and,
Mm-hmm.
all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, going through, how could it be somebody in a suit?
Right.
I mean, when you're looking at that at the enhanced videos of it, and you can actually see muscles
That's right.
moving
Yeah.
when and you're looking, and they talked about it that if it was a costume, there would have been a break at the neck for the headpiece to go on.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at her, there's no break,
Yeah.
and especially if you start looking at her butt.
Yeah.
And Cliff Barrickman does a great talk about the butt, the Bigfoot butt,
Mm.
and this big, wide, thick, you know, buttocks,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like you look at her and you're like, yeah, no, there's no way a man is gonna fill that out or walk like she did.
Mm.
I mean, I think she looked down once. If it was a man in a suit walking across those rocks and
That's true.
falling timber and all
Yeah.
that stuff, you you're looking down because you would be looking down.
Yeah.
How are you going to walk and bring your foot up 90 degrees?
Yeah.
off of the, you're not. We have a 15-degree angle when we walk. So we barely miss the ground when we walk. We have, I
Mm,
think it's a 15-degree incline.
mm,
So when we walk, we're basically just skimming our foot over the surface.
yeah.
They walk in such a way that when they bend at the knee, their foot comes 90 degrees off of the ground
Mm,
because they're walking through different terrain
right.
than we are. We're walking on sidewalks and on flat floors.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. They're walking through, fallen timber, shrubs, whatever else that they're going through, and they have to have a high step,
Yeah.
or else they'd be falling on their faces every 5 minutes.
Yeah. Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Wow.
So I mean, it's
I didn't really think about that before. That's a good one.
yeah. I mean, it's like just watching or listening to what they talk about and how they walk. We
Yeah.
can't replicate it.
They're not walking on paths. There's not a
No,
paved road or a sidewalk or a
there's
path
no
that's
pavement.
cleared.
Right.
Yeah. No.
So they walk with that
Right.
high, they walk with that kickback on their foot where it comes 90 degrees off of the ground.
Mm,
And that's why when you look at Patty, you can see the whites of her feet
mm,
because she's kicking up and her foot is now coming 90 degrees off the floor, the forest floor.
yeah.
So when we walk, do you see the bottom of our feet? No.
Mm-mm.
So I never be because we're just skimming off the top,
Right.
you know, because of that's how we're designed.
Yeah.
That's how we're made to
That's
walk
right.
like.
Yeah.
They're different.
Great
You
point.
know,
I love that.
they're
Great.
different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
Minerva.
yeah, please.
Okay.
I've been waiting.
All right. Let's talk about Minerva.
All
Okay.
right.
So
Oh, well, let me set it up for a second. So we chatted a little bit about it
sure.
and you're gonna share. So after we chatted, I did head down there.
Oh
I hit up the camp. Was it Minerva's that's not where the
no,
campground.
Minerva's the middle one.
The
Minerva's the
middle.
middle one.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Then forget what I just said.
Okay.
Minerva.
Okay. Minerva. My buddy that I went to high school with, his father owned a construction company, and down through his family, they his great grandfather, whatever, purchased land up in Minerva,
Right.
and um, so my buddy's father, we'll call him Paul, my
Okay.
buddy, and so built Paul's father built two cabins.
Mm-hmm.
The original one was 7 miles back in Minerva,
Yeah.
and the newest one he built was about a mile in.
Mm.
And just because the one 7 miles in was like basically a hunter's camp,
Right.
and the women really didn't care going all the way back there because there was no flushing toilets, no
Right.
showers. It was very rudimentary,
Right.
and so my buddy and I would always go to Minerva. We were always going up there. And before uh, Paul's father built the second camp, the one closest to the actual road, um, we would have to trailer up the four-wheelers and everything like that. But once his father built the second camp, the closest one to the road, they would store the four-wheelers there.
Okay.
So we would go all the way up, through Chestertown, Minerva. I don't know what road, I don't know what road we went off of. All I
Mm-hmm.
know is that we took a bunch of secondary roads and then we pulled off of one of these secondary roads. But the one thing that I do know is that it followed the Minerva stream.
Okay.
So if you follow the Minerva stream, if you follow that all the way back in, you'll come across those camps.
Mm.
And um, so it was during the summer. And we decided to go up there. We would go up there to do rough grouse hunting, deer hunting, and fishing.
Great.
And so it was during the summer, and I was a teenager at the time, old enough to, for us to drive up there.
Yeah.
We were of age, 18 maybe.
Nice.
So we went up there to do some fishing, and I always my Paul always was notoriously late for everything. So I said, Mike, not Mike, Paul. I said, Paul, how about we go in? Can we go in during the daylight?
Yeah.
Can we go in during the daylight? Never would happen. Rarely did it ever happen. So Paul turns around, and this time we're going into Minerva. Of course, we're going in late, going in at night.
Yeah.
Couldn't stand it. We would get in, and we'd get the four-wheelers fired up, and it's already going towards dusk. And when we would get off that secondary road, we would go a mile down a dirt road till we got to the first camp. When we would get to that first camp, we'd get the four-wheelers fired up. We get whatever else we needed to bring in with us, and then we would go another 6 miles
Wow.
back. And this was on what he called it a Jeep trail. And I have a hard time saying it's a Jeep trail
Mm.
because I even have a hard time knowing that a Jeep could even make it back there.
Yeah.
It's that rugged. I mean, the Jeeps with like the huge tires, possibly with that, but even it's rough.
Yeah.
And so it was hard enough just getting back there with four-wheelers. And so we would go in there with the four-wheelers, and of course he would lead the way and I would always be behind him. And that was the freakiest thing, because when you were going in and it got dark,
Yeah.
all you had was the front headlight of that four-wheeler and a little bit of the red light when you would hit the brakes in the back.
Right.
Other than that, when you looked left and right or behind you, you
Nothing.
couldn't see your hand in front of your face.
Mm.
So it was creepy, and you couldn't hear anything either because of the engines of the four-wheelers. And I hated that because I couldn't hear.
Right. Right.
I couldn't hear anything. So that was always going back there. Every time, it didn't matter if it was daylight or dark. You always felt like you're being watched.
Yeah.
Always. I always had that feeling. Nothing malicious. It was just kind of like just you're being watched.
Right.
And we would go back there, and we would go fish the Minerva stream. And the Minerva stream was easy. The native brook trout were, you could catch a bucket full of them
Oh, really?
in an hour. I
Wow.
mean, to catch your limit back then, in the 90s, 90, 91, 92, 1991, 1992,
Mm-hmm.
to go back there and catch your limit, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You would have five native brookies. I mean,
Mm.
it was phenomenal fishing.
Wow.
Phenomenal. I mean, the mosquitoes, depending upon the season, the mosquitoes would pick you up and carry you away. I mean, they were just absolutely brutal.
I bet.
Um, that and the black flies.
Mm-hmm.
And the but when we would go back there to go fishing, we would either fish the stream, well, we'd fish the stream, or we would go, once we got to that back camp, and the back camp really wasn't like a rustic cabin. It was almost like a small house.
Yeah.
It had 2 floors. It had on the first floor, it had windows on 3 sides that went all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
And the only side it didn't have windows on was where there was stairs that would take you up to the second floor, which was the sleeping quarters. And there was one wood stove,
Mm-hmm.
so that they would fire that up and the heat rises. So at night they would stoke or we would stoke the fire up, get it going, and then we would just head upstairs, and then we would be warm for the night. Um, so it was a decent sized cabin. I mean, because then they had I don't know 8 to 10 beds up there that
Wow.
so it was sizable. It
Yeah.
was sizable, and so we would go. We decided to go to Black Pond,
Mm,
and I believe they stock it with brookies by helicopter.
really?
And last that I knew, this is going years back.
Right.
And to get up through there, you had to go through I think it's part of, or just on the side of the Vanderwacker forest.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the map, Adirondack map, and we would go up through like Hewlett Pond and Hewlett Pond Brook, and then there was the mountains would come down, and there was a ravine, a valley that we would walk to get to Black Pond.
Okay.
And when we would get to Black Pond, we were on the outlet side. We were on the outlet side of the pond,
Mm-hmm.
and Paul had a rowboat there, and we would just unlock the rowboat,
Mm-hmm.
throw it in the water, and then we would just throw some Lake Clear wobblers on with an 18-inch leader and a hook and a worm, and I would had one hand, only one arm,
Oh,
and he did more with one arm than most people do with two.
wow.
He hunted, water skied, jet skied, four
Wow.
wheel. This
Great.
he was unbelievable, and he was a good shot with one arm. He was a
Mm.
fantastic shot, and so we're and I always used to pick on him because I used to say when we get to go, I'd say, hey, Paul, I'll do the rowing because we would just go in a circle if he did it. So,
Oh boy.
he would always have
Eh,
something to say back to me when
sure.
I would say that.
Yep.
Um, so we're rowing around Black Pond, and the way that it's set up was we enter at the outlet.
Mm-hmm.
On the opposite end of the pond is the inlet, and at that inlet, just into the pond, there's a little island, mostly of just stone. There's some shrubs and a couple trees, but it's not very big. But we would always stop there, and we would make a fire on the island and have like a shore lunch or something like that. It
Mm-hmm.
was really cool. And the way Black Pond is that the trees come right down to the water.
Oh.
There's zero beach. There's no beach,
Mm.
nothing. It's literally trees to water. So we're rowing around the pond, and we had, by the time we were doing this, we probably caught 4 or 5 brook trout.
Oh, nice.
And we had just rounded the corner where that island was at the inlet. So we
Mm-hmm.
were at the backside of the pond. When we went around and just past that island and we were making our way, we probably were about a quarter of the way back towards the inlet. So not far from that island.
Right.
We both heard what we called at the time a hoot.
Mm.
That's what we chalked it up as a
Yeah.
hoot.
Yeah.
It was more like a whoop.
Yeah.
And my buddy, Paul's looking at me and I'm looking at him, and we're like, oh, bear. So, and that's how I left it.
Yeah.
That's how it stayed for 30 years.
Yeah.
It was a bear.
Yeah.
And, because you'd go back there, you'd see bear sign, you'd see bear scat, you'd see
Sure.
where they were like scraping on pine trees and things
Yeah.
like that. It was,
Hmm.
I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, so, there are going to be bears.
Right.
So we kind of both looked at one another and we said, you know what? We got 4 or 5 fish here. We got enough for dinner. You want, let's head back, you
Yeah.
know? So we rode back to the outlet,
Hmm.
chained up the rowboat, and we started making our way. Now, when we go back the same way that we came. So we're going basically down through a valley or a ravine or a
Sure.
hollow, whatever you want to call it. Ridge line on both sides.
Hmm.
And when we were walking back, whatever made that whoop
Mm.
followed us.
Mm.
It paralleled us on the ridge
Mm.
all the way back. 1 mile. It paralleled us the whole way back.
Yeah.
Never saw it. Never saw it, but we could hear it.
Yeah.
And it followed us the whole way back because it knew we had fish in our creel.
Wow.
And it must have been watching. I mean, you couldn't see into the woods,
Right.
on the pond. It
Yeah.
was, I don't, it was, I mean, it's all like that, thick, like hemlock,
Mm.
all the branches just overhang into the, over the water. I mean, you can't see anything.
Yeah.
It's that thick. It's just like looking at a wall of green, and it never threw anything into the water. It never, made any type of aggression. It was
Mm.
just one single whoop,
Wow.
and it was loud because it just, even though we were on the water, which made it sound even louder. I mean, it was, it echoed. Let me put it that way.
Right.
It echoed.
Yeah. That's great. You gave me chills thinking about it, as you're speaking and talking, because I've heard this story a couple times. Well, not story, but I've heard this type of experience a couple times
Right.
before, from a couple other folks, pretty much the same exact type, where it felt like they were being escorted out of the woods. They could hear something in the distance, step by step, until they got to a certain distance, and then it just stopped. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. When we returned back to the camp, it was when it stopped.
Mm.
So if it literally followed us a mile,
Yeah.
to go from Black Pond to his camp was approximately 1 mile. And when we finally got back to the camp was when it stopped. And the weirdest, it was always the same. Every time I would go back there to that second camp, and I loved going back there because I mean, it was like a whole new world, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was also kind of creepy too because when I was going back there, you always felt like you were being watched. Always. It didn't matter where you went, what part of the stream you were fishing, or if you're up on Black Pond, you always felt like you had eyes on you.
Mm.
I always did. I don't know about him, but I
Yeah.
did. I always
Yeah.
felt like something is there's. I never felt so comfortable that I just would put it on my mind. There was always a degree of uncomfortableness.
Right. Yeah. Wow. I bet. I bet. I think I would feel that way too. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure of it. Thinking about just that, I'm just picturing, as you're talking, I could picture the cabin, I could picture the pond, and the rowboat, and making your way back, and hearing something in the distance, and hearing that whoop, and it's just I can imagine that it would
Oh, I
be
mean, like I
you
said,
would feel uncomfortable.
yeah, and for 30 years, John, we it was it was bear.
Mm.
It was a bear.
Right.
Until I looked it up, and I heard it on one of the shows,
Mm-hmm.
bears don't hoop. So what do I said, okay, well, I'm going to research that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking it up, and I'm listening to different audio of bears to
Right.
see if I can correlate what I heard to what bears make. Not
No.
one of them even close got
Hmm.
to what I heard and what Paul heard. So what ended up uh, um, happening is here is that me piecing the puzzle again.
Right. Right. Yep.
Is I'm hearing this on the shows. Now I'm researching bear.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm researching what bears sound like. What black bears sound like. I'm not going to research grizzly bears. We don't have them here.
Right.
I'm researching black bear. Sounds of a black bear. None of it sounded even close to what I heard. And then I'm listening about stories of fishermen,
Yeah.
whether they're in a canoe, a rowboat, or whatever, and hearing something coming from the woods.
Yeah.
The whoops and or the screams or something like this. This was a whoop,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm like, oh, there it is. There it is. And then of course you listen to what people have some audio,
Yeah.
of what they're listening to. And I'm like, that's it. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I that's what I heard. That's exactly what I heard,
Right.
you know. And then I'm just like piecing it all together,
Yep.
and I'm like, well, it wasn't 30 years later. I'm like, that wasn't a bear.
No.
That wasn't a bear.
Mm. Whew. That's great. I love it.
Wasn't a bear,
Yeah.
you know.
Uh, yeah. You know how many times I hear that? That's like common. It was not a bear. It was not a moose. Right.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, you're going to tell somebody who's been hunting for 30 years, been hunting deer and bear,
Yeah.
and they see something, right? It's usually visual,
Yeah.
and they're telling you what they see, and yet you'll have people tell them that that's not what you saw. You saw a moose or
Yeah.
it was a bear. And the guy is like adamant saying, I know what I saw, and it
Right.
wasn't a bear and it wasn't a moose. I've been hunting for 30 years. I
Yeah.
think I know what I'm looking at. It wasn't a bear. And then they proceed to tell you that it walked away on two legs. how can you
Yeah.
deny how can you deny what they're saying? I don't know.
Right. Right. Yeah. I'm not questioning it.
No,
Not
I'm
at
not.
all.
No.
Um, all right. So, are we gonna move on to the camp?
Northampton?
Yeah, yeah,
All
Northampton.
right,
Yeah.
let's do that. Okay.
So real quick. So we talked about it and I said, okay, good. I jumped in the car and I ran over there. I say ran, but it was like an hour and a half drive. But
Yeah, yeah.
I got
Okay.
over there. The camp's closed for the season.
Yep.
But I made my way in. I had to park out on the road and just walk in. And I did come across a couple of maintenance folks and I said, "Is it okay if I'm in here just kind of walking around, taking pictures?" They're like, "Yeah, do whatever you like." I said, "Okay."
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. It was really cool. Because so they were over by, um, there was like a maintenance building, so they were doing whatever they were doing right there in that one spot, and that's a huge park. I'd never been there before, so
Oh,
I'm
it's
excited.
big.
I'm excited. I'm going back next week. I'm gonna do some camping there next year because that was super cool.
Yeah,
Um,
good.
but it was interesting to walk around by myself, being the only one basically in that entire
Campsite.
state park. Yeah.
Yep.
Just kind of wandering around, trying to take shortcuts through the mud and, because now they've lowered the level of the lake. So
Oh,
that
yeah.
whole inlet is empty.
Yep.
And it looks like you can walk across there, but you'll sink in the mud. So
Oh, yeah.
I
Oh,
took
yeah.
one step, my boot went in about 8 to 10 inches. I pulled it out, said, I'm going around. I don't
Yeah.
want to, but I'm gonna. But
That good
what
old
a
Adirondack mud.
yes, yes. What a beautiful place though. So I was excited to spend some time there. I didn't feel uncomfortable, but I definitely felt a presence of sorts while I was there.
Okay.
So very interesting. So I'll let you I just want to I do have a lot of video of that, so we'll put something together.
Oh,
But
cool.
yeah, yeah. You
Oh, very
I
good.
sent you pictures of the site, right?
Yep.
So that was
You
awesome. I
were
was really
there.
yeah. I was excited to find that. It's a great site too, because you got the
Oh, yeah.
bathrooms right behind you.
Bathrooms are right behind you.
Yeah.
Nobody goes to it. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So September 15th through the 21st, I believe, um, I decided to go camping at Northampton State Campground. And I brought my two dogs with me that you've seen me deal with here in the
Sure.
last uh, amount of time that we've been together.
Yeah.
Um, and I had the dogs with me, and I arrived on a Sunday,
Mm.
and the I was lucky to get Site 61. Um, when I went to purchase the ticket or my stay, at that point in time, I'm looking at the map of Northampton, and I forgot how many campsites there. Oh, 200, I
200,
think.
200 something.
Um, there were like five campsites left.
Wow.
And so I picked 61 because it
Mm-hmm.
was close to the bathroom.
Sure.
And I'm like, what is going on here?
Mm.
You know, this time of year, kids are back in school. I go, this place is packed.
Yeah.
I show up and I'm looking around and I'm like, where is everybody? There's hardly anybody here.
Wow.
And what I came to realize was is that when I walked around after I'd set up camp and I walked around, they had a lot of stapled onto some trees,
Mm-hmm.
some signs saying that this site is going to be renovated.
Right.
There's going to be some renovations, and there were quite a few of those
Mm-hmm.
that I saw. And so I arrived on the Sunday because I didn't. Most people are leaving on Sundays, and so I like to arrive on a Sunday. So therefore, it's quiet. You know, people are leaving. You're gonna have there's the campground is usually um, minimally, there's minimal sites are being taken up. So you can camp in peace and quiet from Sunday to Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday, and
Sure.
then
Yeah.
Thursday comes in the next weekend group,
Mm-hmm.
is coming in. So I got there at Sunday at 1 o'clock, and I tent. So I set up. I have a one Tigress North Gaze Terraline cotton tent, which is more kind of like canvas,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a
Yep.
teepee tent. And so it's got the vent for a hot stove for
Oh,
so
wow.
it's a four season tent. I love it.
Yeah.
And but I had to buy and purchase the inner mesh tent because of the dogs, because
Yeah.
there's no floor on the teepee tent, and they figured out years ago that all they got to do is shove their nose underneath the side of it and they can squeak out,
Mm-hmm.
and I dealt with that for one camping trip, and that was a constantly chasing the dogs. So
Mm.
I made sure that I bought the mesh tent, so which comes into play later on in the
Sure.
story. So I had my one Tigress North Gaze tent set up uh, on the back side of the site, closest to the bathroom,
Okay.
and my doors were facing the campground road,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
opposite. And then closer to the road, there was another little kind of cutout where another tent could be put. and that's where I put my provisions tent. I had the one Tigris platoon tent. I had that set up, and that's where I kept all my wood and everything that I was going to need for the week.
Yep.
And so, and I had purchased a refrigerator cooler.
Yes.
It was called the Ice Co VL45,
Mm.
and it was my first time using it, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
That thing was awesome, and no more ice,
Yeah.
no more soggy lunch meat or egg
Mm-hmm.
cartons that disintegrate. It was fantastic. And I brought the power station with me. The Vitamin Flash 1000. That thing is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And which was nice because I realized that I brought the solar panels with me because I said, in the event that I can't get a lot of sun
Mm-hmm.
with the Vitamin Flash 1000, the bathroom is less than 100 feet away. I can just grab the power station if I drain it, and I can recharge it in an hour. There's an outlet right in the bathroom. I said that's perfect.
Yeah.
So that's why
Yep.
I was happy to get Site 61.
Mm-hmm.
And the acorns, if I talk about that, the acorns were falling like rain.
Yeah.
In that area of the campground, it's a lot of hemlock and a lot of oak,
Yeah.
and there's acorns everywhere.
Yep.
And I mean, when they would hit my tent, if they hit it dead on, it sounded like a drum.
Mm.
And that's how it sounded.
Yeah.
And so I set up camp, and around 4 o'clock, I decided that I was going to go down to the beach and do some fishing
Yep.
because there's a nice little section there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took about 15 minutes with the dogs. So as I'm, buttoning everything up in camp, um, and I'm getting ready to head out. And let me back up just a little bit.
Sure.
During that time that I had set up,
Mm-hmm.
there was literally nobody there. And come Monday, even less people were there. And a lot of people left Monday morning.
Right.
But on Sunday afternoon, after I had set up, a couple came in with a fifth wheel at Site 62, which
Oh.
was right across the road from me.
Yep.
That comes into play big time. This couple. Okay. Um, so I go fishing, and just before I left to go fishing, I got the dogs all ready. If I'm if I'm in the center of my camp and I'm looking towards the bathrooms, I heard two distinct, clear as day wood knocks.
Mm-hmm.
I split my own wood when I go camping. I take
Yeah.
down my own trees when I go camping. I know what I've been in the woods long enough to know what branches sound like when they break. I know what a tree sounds like when it falls in the woods. I've heard that, when trees breaking and falling. This was two wood knocks, one right after the other. Crack, crack.
Yeah.
This was not done. This wasn't somebody's axe,
Right.
chopping wood or trying to split wood. This was just two extremely loud crack, crack. It was
Mm.
like, if I can explain it, was like if somebody took, if David Ortiz from the Boston Red Sox took a baseball bat and smacked an oak tree
Mm.
and multiply it times 100.
Wow.
That's how loud it was. It was loud.
Mm.
And And so I'm, it's not like you're this. Where did I? How can I explain it? It wasn't like this. Wasn't like something like you and I would hold a bat in our hand. This
Right.
is something that sounded like it was probably about that big around.
Mm.
That's how the force
Yeah.
that this was used. It was just, it was, it automatically, because by this time I had been watching and listening to, countless episodes of people's encounters with
Right. Right.
Bigfoot Society and Bigfoot theory and Sasquatch, Fred Roll up there in Alaska and all that stuff. And I heard those too. Now, this is me being open-minded. This is being having some knowledge of other people's experiences and what to listen for.
Right.
When I heard those two knocks, because they were definitely not, they weren't of nature. They were made.
Yeah.
It was crack, crack.
Yeah.
Automatically, now I'm thinking those are wood knocks.
Yeah.
Those are wood knocks. That is not somebody chopping wood. That's not somebody splitting wood. That's not a tree breaking.
Yeah.
That's not a branch breaking. That it
Mm-hmm.
was deliberate. It was made. Shortly after I heard that second knock,
Yeah.
now beyond the campground, beyond the bathroom is more campground. And again, it's all like I said, it's hemlock, oak, and then the campground can goes on for a ways and then it stops. And beyond that, where the state campground ends is the beginning of a like a wetland,
Yeah.
marshy area. How far does that extend? I don't know. But
Mm.
after I heard that second knock in the distance beyond those knocks, I heard a howl.
Mm.
I can't I can't recreate what I heard. I heard I heard a response
Mm.
to the knocks,
Right.
but it was distant. It was beyond where I'm thinking it was in the marsh.
Right.
And so I just listened. I heard I heard the response. I wasn't thinking I was going to hear anything. I wasn't looking to hear anything. I just heard it.
Right.
It wasn't like I heard two knocks and I'm thinking, oh, Bigfoot, or Sasquatch. I heard the two knocks and I'm like, as I'm piecing that, what I just witnessed, what I just heard, as I'm kind of like rationalizing and putting that in my head,
Right.
I hear the howl.
Mm.
Now I'm like, oh, I'm like,
High
okay.
alert. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, and I just left it at that.
Mm-hmm.
And I went fishing.
Yeah.
Came back probably around, by the time I got back, it's probably around 8:30, quarter to 9. So it's dark. I get the dog situated. I go in, I get the camp set up. I get everything blocked down. I go into the tent and then I'm just watching some YouTube videos or whatever. The dogs are trying to, I was on a cot. So try imagine me being on a cot and two
Mm.
dogs that want to be on a cot. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was, it was a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And and I would be up for a while. And that first night I was up quite a bit. And it was probably around midnight. And I'm just laying there and I hear something messing around with my garbage bag.
Mm.
Now, where I set my garbage bag up was just in front of and to the right of my north gate of the north gate's tent.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I hung it was that there were some broken branches on this pine, and I raised it up. I'm 6 foot tall, so I put the opening of the bag at head height,
Yeah.
and then hung the straps higher up.
Yeah.
Okay, and so, but it was only for what I believe to be a moment.
Right.
Okay, so I'm like, wow, someone's messing around with the bag. I
Yeah.
could hear crinkle, crinkle, but very gentle, very, it wasn't where something was ripping at it,
Right.
or it was very kind of subtle. It was
Mm.
almost like it was done with a degree of trying to be silent.
Mm.
Okay. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I put it out of my mind. So I'm like, oh, maybe it was a squirrel or something like that, or chipmunk or
Sure. Yeah.
so the next morning I deliberately go and look at the bag because I'm looking to see if it was torn,
Sure.
bite
Yeah.
marks, whatever. The bag was just the way that I hung it. It was pristine.
Mm.
Not a scratch, not a rip, not a tear, nothing gnawed at it, tore at it, nothing. I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
And so I said, oh, okay. And the way that I camp, I do everything kind of like the old way.
Mm-hmm.
I do everything bushcraft. So I'm always, I'm using ferrocerium rods, or I'm using flint and steel to start my
Oh,
fires.
okay. All right.
I'm making birds' nests with, cedar and fat wood from the pine. So
Nice.
I'm always preparing for the next fire. So I'm busy throughout the day in camp,
Yeah.
either trying, preparing a meal, or I'm preparing for the next meal and the fires and, everything that requires for all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that part I enjoy. So
Yeah.
I, Monday goes around with no hitch.
Mm-hmm.
3:30 comes around, getting ready, getting close to 4, and I decided I'm going to go fishing again. So I round up the dogs. I kind of shore up my camp. Right around 4 o'clock, one single knock,
Mm.
just as loud as the two prior, but one only.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm thinking, oh, here it is again.
Yeah.
And I purposely waited a little bit to see if I would hear something.
Yeah.
Never heard anything, but it was one singular knock
Yeah.
with the same type of force that the night prior.
Wow.
I said, okay. And I went fishing.
Yeah.
Came back 8:30, quarter to 9, got the dog situated, went to bed. I was exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear anything Monday night. Tuesday morning comes up, and I'm doing my camp stuff. And I decided that I was gonna make homemade butter.
Mm.
And that's with just taking like any kind of jar, really,
Mm-hmm.
a glass jar, and you just fill half of it up with buttermilk, or not buttermilk, but with heavy cream.
Yeah.
Fill it up halfway with heavy cream, and you just shake the hell out of it
Mm.
for like 15 minutes. And then the buttermilk will separate from the cream, and you pour off the buttermilk, and which you can reserve and make buttermilk biscuits. And then the cream, the solid cream that you have left, is butter.
Oh.
So I made some, and it came out great. And I, as a nice gesture, I brought some over to my next door neighbors.
Yeah.
And so I gave them the butter, and yes. So Sunday, Monday, yeah, Tuesday. So she comes back later on, or no, was it? No, it was like Wednesday. I made the butter.
Yeah.
Wednesday morning, Tuesday comes around, and I don't have any. Nothing had gone on a Tuesday.
Okay.
Wednesday morning comes. I decide to make the butter. I
Yep.
give them the butter.
Yep.
She comes back later
Mm.
on that Wednesday with homemade biscuits
Oh,
that she used that she used the butter that I gave her.
great.
So I said, "Oh, geez, thank you. You didn't have to do that." I was like,
Yeah.
"Thank you very much. I was just trying to be nice and give you something that I made." And in talking in just talking about that,
Yeah.
she completely changed the subject. Now this is now 3 days. So Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night. This is now Wednesday,
Yeah.
probably around noon.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, "Have you heard anything come through your camp the last 3 nights?" I said, "Well, to be honest with you," I said, I heard something Sunday around midnight kind of go through my garbage bag a little bit." She goes, "Something has come through your camp and my camp the last 3 nights."
What?
I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah." She goes, "Every night I hear it go through your garbage bag." She goes, "I can hear it walking." So now as she's divulging this information to me,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's literally just flowing out of her mouth.
Yeah.
She goes, "I could hear it breathing.
Oh.
I could hear the footsteps."
Mm.
She goes, "I was too scared to look out my window."
Mm.
I said, "Okay." I said, she goes, "One of the nights, it must have got spooked because it tore out of here and was going through the woods, and it sounded like a freight train."
Wow.
I said, "Okay." She continues because they were leaving Thursday morning. She continues and says, "Not only that," she said, they had, you ever see the Coleman grills,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that fold down? They
Yes.
kind of collapse down and you can just like throw them in the back of your trunk or whatever.
Yeah.
They had one of those underneath the fifth wheel part of their trailer.
Sure. Yeah.
She said, "I don't know what it was, but whatever it was physically moved our grill,
Hmm.
picked it up and moved it."
Ah.
I said it wasn't pushed or shoved or anything like that. Like a
Yeah.
bear might come in and maybe nudge it or push it, because she says it was physically moved.
Oh.
And there was something else, and when she told me, I didn't register it,
Yeah.
but there was something else that they had on the ground. I think it was probably one of the things that you kind of has all the bristles on it, where you
Yeah.
you take your bottom of your foot and you kind of like take all the
Oh,
dirt
right.
off of your.
Yeah.
That's what I think she was talking about. She said whatever it was stepped on it and broke it.
Mm. Oh,
So I'm like, she's saying all this to me. And I said, nonchalantly, I said, well, maybe it was Bigfoot.
yeah.
She didn't, she was like, yeah, she really didn't want to go down that road, you know. So I was
Yeah.
like, well, and I told her, I said, well, listen, I said, I heard something go through my garbage bag. And Sunday night, I heard two wood knocks. On Monday night, I heard one wood knock. You're telling me, and I asked her specifically, I said, you heard the foot, you heard the footfalls?
Yeah.
You could hear it walking? She said, yeah. I said, did it sound like it had 2 feet or was it on four? She really, she really couldn't answer. She goes, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I said, okay. And as I'm putting this all together, I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
one, you're not going to hear a bear walking.
No.
I mean, you might hear a bear walking through the woods,
Mm.
with the scuffling of leaves and whatever have you, but you're not going to hear footfalls,
Mm-mm.
not on a bear. And she heard the breathing.
Mm.
And she said it was just like my experience when I was a kid. She
Yeah,
said
that's
I could hear heavy, she said heavy, like labored breathing.
mm.
And I said, okay. So as she's telling me all this stuff, John, I'm taking everything that I've heard
Yeah.
from all the encounters that I've had, and I'm piecing all of this together.
Yeah.
And how many times have I heard that it tore through the woods and it sounded like a freight train breaking branches? That's exactly the same thing she told me.
Mm-hmm.
She could hear the footfall. She could hear the breathing.
Mm-hmm.
It physically picked up. This is the one that got me. It physically picked up and moved their grill.
Mm.
I'm like, you have to have thumbs to do that.
Yeah.
You have to have thumb. You're not going to just,
Mm-mm.
you know, because she made the motion when she was telling me. She made the grab like she was grabbing the grill and picking it up and moving it.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like,
Woo.
holy crap,
Yeah.
And then to have something step on something and break it, to me,
Yeah.
that takes, most camping stuff, if you're talking like that, is going to be made for somebody, say, a large man,
Yeah.
300 pounds, 320, 330 pounds, 40
Mm.
pounds,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you would take that type of weight. Well, that's what a bear would weigh.
Yeah.
But whatever this was stepped on it and physically broke it.
Yeah.
So I had to have some considerable weight, you
Those
know.
things are very sturdy too. Yeah.
Yeah, you ever see them? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it's
Big hunk of wood with
big hunk of
bristles.
wood,
Yeah.
and it was. She said it was broke,
Wow. Maybe that's what spooked him.
possibly, and that's what made him tear through the woods.
Yeah.
Because maybe it shocked him too because he wasn't expecting bristles. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, but um, so I'm piecing all of this together,
Yeah.
and I'm like, one, I kind of was thinking, well, there's a good possibility this could be a Sasquatch.
Sure.
Two wood knocks, I hear a howl in the distance,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next day the wood knock again,
Mm-hmm.
single wood knock. And I was happy with that. I was like, well, it could very well be. I'm like,
Sure.
wow, I've had my first, you know, other than not knowing, because 40 years ago I didn't know. 30
Mm-hmm.
years ago when I was at Minerva, I didn't know.
Yeah.
But this time in 2024, with all of those encounters and the learning and the listening and piecing all of what encounters entail, whether it be smell, sight, or sound, And I'm listening to this, I'm like, and I just smiled because I was like, oh, you know what? It could be,
Yeah.
it could be. But then when I met with her, I mean, and it was like she was dying to tell me because it was like, here's your butter, and she's bringing back biscuits, and I'm
Yeah.
like thanking her for the biscuits, and I don't think I even had the biscuits in my hand. And she was already asking me,
Yeah.
did you have anything come through your camp the last
Mm,
3 nights?
mm,
And then she's telling me all this stuff, having it go through the woods like a freight train, breaking branches,
yeah.
just like just a bull moose,
Mm, mm,
and the picking up of the grill, the breaking of the foot scraper thing, the footsteps, the footfalls that she could hear,
yeah.
and the breathing.
Unbelievable.
I'm putting all this together, and I'm like, this. If I put all of this together, what is the probability that this was a Sasquatch?
Sounds like it. Sounds like it to me. I'll tell
It
you that.
sounds like it. It sounds like it to me for everything that I
Yeah.
know and the
Hmm.
hundreds of encounters that I've listened to.
Yeah.
How could it not be?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm leaning towards, like 90-10,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
to like, this is, and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that this wasn't a bear.
Yeah.
At least I know that. I know that with a degree of confidence that this was not a bear.
Mm-mm.
Because I asked her distinctly, I said, did you go down to the beach, down to the water's edge to see if there's any bear tracks?
Mm.
And, I didn't mention the Sasquatch thing because she kind of dismissed that. I said, well, at least did you go down there and see if there were any bear tracks?
Yeah.
And she did. She went
Mm.
down there and she kind of combed her area of the beach, and she actually came back and said later, um, she goes, yeah, I didn't
No
see any
tracks.
bear tracks, no
Mm.
bear tracks. So, I was like, okay, well, I didn't at least meander down there
Hmm.
if it happened to be. And it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It really was, as to
Yeah.
like sit there and to be a part of something at that point in
Yeah.
time, because all the years prior, it was after the fact.
Hmm.
This was with some knowledge and some open mindedness
Right.
as to the potential of it being something else other
Mm.
than a bear. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
this, this, what an experience,
Yes. Yes.
even though I didn't see anything, I heard a vocalization, like it was in the distance, the wood knocks and her story. And just, I was like, wow, what a phenomenal experience,
Mm.
to have, and what makes me think about it is that we had talked, they had talked to one of the rangers there,
Hmm.
and they told the ranger what was going on. Something's coming through the camp.
Hmm.
So on that Wednesday, I ended up stopping and talking to the ranger.
Yeah.
He goes, so wait a minute, you're in 61? I said, yeah. He goes, wow. He goes, your story matches up with their story.
Mm.
He said, okay. He says, I'm going to go and talk with the supervisor because our last security round is at 11 o'clock.
Mm.
He said, since this stuff seems to be going around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, we're going to add an additional round of security at 1 o'clock in the morning. And they
Right.
did.
Good.
And, but here's the funny thing, John. I was there Thursday night and
Mm.
Friday night, two
Yep.
additional nights. Nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
So and that's when the influx of a whole bunch of 70,
Mm,
I think he told me 75 or 77 new campers were coming in on Thursday.
wow.
Okay. So I find it kind of weird, as I'm projecting on this, and
Yeah.
I'm saying to myself, they know what the campsite's all about.
Yeah.
They know. If this is truly
Yeah. They have
Sasquatch,
to.
they
Absolutely.
know. I go, they knew enough to come in on Sunday night when everybody was leaving
That's
and there was
right. Yeah.
hardly any campers in the campground.
Yep.
They knew that they could get away with rummaging around without being seen,
Mm-hmm.
right? So their level of having to be aware or alert is lessened. They don't have to be on edge. So they knew they could do that on Sunday night. They knew they could do it on Monday night. They knew they could do it on Tuesday night, and they could do it on Wednesday. They knew enough that come Thursday, all the campers start coming in, that they weren't going to be able to do this again until the following Sunday.
Right.
So they knew that Sunday through Wednesday, the campground had a minimal of campers.
Yeah.
I mean, beyond where my campsite was at 61, I was at the end. I was basically on the end of the campsite.
Yeah.
Even though there were other campsites located beyond that bathroom, there was nobody there. I was it.
Right.
If the campground was to shrink, I would have been on the edge of the campsite or at the edge of the campground.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's how much the campground shrunk. There was nobody there.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just taking a quick look at the map because I did snap a picture of the site map.
Yeah,
Um, it's a very interesting area. It's an interesting spot. I've been holding back. I didn't want to, but I wanted to share with you that when I went and I took a look at the site, and so the back of your tent was facing the bathroom, right?
the back of my tent was facing the
Yeah.
bathroom.
So you had a line that went down the side of your tent to toward the bathroom, right?
Yeah,
That was the path that you took. Um,
yeah. If
so
you could, you could
if you
literally see, you could see the path
yeah,
that went from the back. Yeah, there was a path that went from my campsite directly to that bathroom. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Um, if you would have followed that path and then just steer around the back of that bathroom,
yeah,
instead of going for the front for the doors.
yeah,
If you steered for the back and but stayed on that straight narrow path,
yeah.
there's a game trail
Okay,
right there that leads directly into the woods. And that's why I was just looking at the map, and I could throw that up on the screen uh, for
sure.
everyone else. But that leads to a big open patch
Oh yeah,
with only a couple sites that break between that and the open wild.
that's correct.
Um, yeah, so it's a very interesting spot because once you get to that bathroom, there's a big opening there.
Right, there's an
Um,
opening there.
there's
Right, yeah,
paths that go to other campsites, right?
correct.
They're congregating to go to the bathroom. I get that.
Sure.
But then there was a tree down.
Yeah,
I could see as soon as I started looking and scanning the area, I saw there's a game trail because you can see that there's a path. It's not a path like walked path.
right.
It's just not. It looks like it's a path that that game
It's
uses,
a
right?
deer run.
It's a
Deer
deer
run.
run. Yeah. There's a
Sure.
tree down. So you got to
Yep.
walk over the tree, start making my way down the path. There's another tree down. So the path is being blocked. Uh,
Yeah.
and you know, I found a possible print back there. But
Okay.
it was interesting to see that right by the side of that bathroom out into the wild, there is a path. I did put the drone up behind so that campsite, that campground is right at the end of civilization in that area.
Correct. Correct.
Everything behind it is just forest.
Correct.
So it's really interesting to see how the ecology of that area looks.
Sure.
Yeah.
sure. And I know that it's kind of marshy back there once you get
Yeah.
beyond the campground.
Sure.
And just and through personal accounts that I've listened to, you know, marshes and Sasquatch kind of go hand in hand,
Yeah.
just like just like cedarwood and Sasquatch kind of go hand in hand,
Yeah.
you know. And to be honest with you, John, also too, I mean, there's what made even more sense was that the time of year
Mm.
is um, not far, stone's throw away is the road that takes you to the Northville Lake Placid Trail,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
um, right there, right across the street almost from the campsite. So on Route 30. And the I watched a number of videos. There's a lot more on YouTube now. It's going to take me a while to find the one. Um, but there was a couple that were making their documentary of their trip through their through hike of the NPT, and they were talking about how they had some experiences or something on their through hike, and they ended up talking with this other couple that they met up with or whatever. And they asked them, "Hey, have you experienced anything?" You know, kind of like, you know, and kind of alluding to Sasquatch, you
Mm-hmm.
know, kind of stuff. And the other couple kind of mentioned, "Oh, you mean Bigfoot?" You know, and they're like, "Well, and there's a local guy. I don't know where he lives, if it's Mayfield or Northville, where he is, but he's known to fish the ponds and streams and lakes along the NPT. And apparently, this one couple had conversations with this guy.
Mm.
And they said, if you want to know, if you come across this guy fishing, you know, the lakes, ponds, or streams here, and they gave him a description, I think, of what this guy looked like,
Yeah.
talk with him.
Yeah.
And they ran across the guy, and they wouldn't say anything on their show, on their video of the MPT, but I remember them specifically saying that if you want to know and you come across this guy fishing the lakes and ponds and streams of the NPT, ask him, because he will tell you.
Oh, wow.
He will tell you what goes on that trail.
Mm.
Constantly fishing it all the time.
Yeah.
So that's how they left it. They left it very open ended. They didn't drop names. They didn't do anything like that. They just, if you come across this
Yeah.
guy,
Yeah.
ask him, he'll tell you, you know.
Yeah.
And he didn't, the stories that he did say to them, they never regurgitated it. They never spoke of it. They said, you need to ask him.
Mm.
So they didn't want to, I'm thinking they probably didn't want to put it on there because of potential ridicule
Sure.
or
Sure. Yeah.
judgment or whatever have you.
Yeah.
But, you know, with that in mind,
Mm.
the going through the NPT is, you're going through like the heart of the Adirondacks. You're
Yeah.
going through the most primitive, untouched sections of the Adirondacks. It's you know, it would be, if I were to be a Sasquatch, if I was to be a Sasquatch researcher, that's where I would go.
Mm.
That's where I would go. I would go and find the rivers, the streams, the
Yeah.
water sources, the
Mm-hmm.
ridge lines, whatever it is that I need to do, and I would focus my attention on that NPT.
Yeah.
And what makes me what makes me say is that because it's the NPT starts in Northville and Northampton is right there,
Yeah.
at the time of year, your blueberries are gone, your raspberries are gone, your blackberries are gone. The other flora that they could have been eating are dying out. Fall is in the air. forage is becoming scarce,
Yeah.
it would make sense that they would move and migrate
Back in.
down,
Yeah.
down, down into get a little closer to civilization
Yep.
and scavenge what they could,
Yep.
and that's what I'm thinking is happening. And
Hmm.
it's kind of funny that we're talking about this tonight because last night I was listening to Bigfoot Society and he was interviewing this fellow from the state of Washington, and it's something about Lake Cushman or something like that. I'm listening to this guy, John, talk.
Mm.
It was almost the same story, but West Coast
Oh, really? Wow.
that I just gave you. His was a little bit more in depth, or not in
Wow.
depth, but a little bit more. There were more things that happened,
Yeah.
but the time of year, September,
Yeah.
where campground,
Mm.
limited, very sparse in population of campers.
Yeah.
They were, they were kind of like the only ones there. You
Yeah.
know, kind of like this situation here in
Mm.
Northampton on the East Coast. I'm listening to this. I'm like, oh my God, this guy
Yeah.
is basically telling me the same story, but West Coast. The only thing different is that his experience, they were throwing branches into his campsite.
Oh, geez. Mm.
And he said the branches were coming in horizontal. So it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
they were being thrown.
Right.
Something was throwing branches. And he could sit there and say that he could physically see where the branch was grabbed and the bark was ripped off,
Mm.
coming off the break of breaking it off the tree.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Interesting.
So that's so I'm listening to all this stuff and I'm like, well, I'm basically listening to my story, my experience,
Yeah.
but
West
through
Coast.
him, who's
Interesting.
3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
and I was like, it was incredible. And I'm sitting there and I was like, I can't wait to tell John because it
Yeah.
was like, same thing, just coast apart, and I'm like,
Hmm.
wow, time of year,
Yep.
the campground, nothing, very sparsely populated campground,
Hmm.
and, breaking things and the wood knocks. It was just my story, just like I said, in the state of Washington, and that
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah. I've talked to some other people about possible migration, things like that, especially during the summer months in the Adirondacks, right? The Adirondacks get flooded in the summer months and then it's completely dead in the winter, in the fall and the winter months. Well,
Yep.
the fall's, pretty decent, but
Yeah.
everything closes. Like I drove through east to west through the entire park today. And it was closed. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
closed.
Yeah.
Old Forge was open, but not all of it, maybe a third of it. But
Yeah.
every other town I passed through, everything was closed. They
Sure.
had their
Yeah.
signs up, the lights were off, the dumpsters were empty, so nothing going on. So yeah, it may be that it now they can get closer to civilization. Yeah.
And the thing that I find out a lot, what I'm finding out a lot is that they're closer, everybody wants to go deep, in. And, the deeper the better. And, but part of me believes that. And the other part says, I don't think you have to go that far.
Yeah.
I really don't think you have to go that far. I think that their curiosity, um,
Hmm.
is there. I mean, how many encounters do you listen about that you've heard? They talk about, you know,
In the middle of the woods.
in the middle of the woods or just outside in somebody's backyard,
Yeah.
on far and off of farmland. I
Hmm.
mean, or
Yeah.
something like, and you're talking, this is a populated area. There's
Yeah.
houses splattering of houses over here, da 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 da. There
Right.
people are talking about, yeah, they came into my backyard and took my chickens. I
Yeah.
mean, or something like that.
Right.
So it's like, I think they come to you.
Yeah. I think so too.
I think,
Agreed.
going out and making all kinds of wood knocks and making whooping sounds and this, that, and the other thing. I think if I was to get more involved in it, and I would just go and set up a camp
Yeah.
and you know, just do my normal stuff,
Hmm.
just and just let them come to you.
Yeah. Agreed. That's my plan.
Yeah, just let them come to you.
I'm
So
gonna, that's exactly my plan. I've been talking to some folks and that's something I've been really thinking about. And I may start as early as tomorrow, but I obviously I've done enough research that I know a handful of places that have a lot of activity. And I think if I could plant myself in there as a friendly, that there's a possibility that I may have an encounter, you know?
sure, yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I wasn't listen when I went to Northampton this year. I wasn't expecting to hear wood knocks.
Right.
I wasn't expecting to hear especially a howl in the far distance. I mean, it was plain as day. I mean, it wasn't like this was like an owl. It wasn't an owl. I know what they sound like.
Right.
It wasn't a dog howling. It wasn't a wolf. It wasn't any of that. It was something that I can't really I can't regurgitate. I can't redo it. I can't.
Yeah.
It's I know by hearing it, I know what it was. It was a howl, kind of like a growl howl. I
Yeah.
guess I don't know how I could put it. But it was definitely audible. I could definitely hear it, and I
Right.
could definitely sit there and say that it wasn't it wasn't what you would think it would
Mm.
was. It wasn't something that you would just say, "Oh, that was an owl." You
Yeah.
know, it was like, "Nah, that's not an owl." I know
Yeah.
what owls sound like. That's not an owl. And
But that could be just be their language, you know? So what does two wood knocks mean? What does one wood knock mean, right?
I have
Like
no
I've
idea.
me and my buddy Bud, we experienced two wood knocks and we have an overwhelming feeling that we need to leave the area, right? And we don't know, we weren't told, we just looked at each other and said, time to go.
Time to
Right.
go.
Time to go. Something told us it's time to leave and we're leaving. And we got some pushback. I got some pushback on that. Folks saying, you're hunting Bigfoot. Why would you leave? I'm like, first, I'm not hunting Bigfoot. I was doing an investigation and I was told to leave and I left. I'm not hanging around. But yeah. So I don't know. So is it something that they're saying between each other? Like, if hey, if I two knocks means this, one knock means that, right? One whoop means this. Maybe
Yeah,
a guttural growl, depending upon the length, means something different, right?
yeah,
Um, it could just be their language, and we don't know that. But
right.
I would think that that's a real possibility.
Oh, it could be. It all depends on the situation as to
Yeah,
what it is. I mean,
sure.
does the two wood knocks mean something where maybe they have young?
Yeah,
Okay, where two
right.
wood knocks in that situation,
Sure.
because I believe that they're solitary, and I think
Hmm.
if they are solitary, they're more likely male,
Hmm.
and I think they travel in family groups
Sure.
or clans,
Yep.
as so to say. Um, I'm also, especially when I was at Northampton, when I heard those two wood knocks, then I heard that response
Hmm.
further back. I think it was like on the backside of that marsh. And because the wood knocks were when I heard them, they were generally in the same direction.
Yeah.
It wasn't like two wood knocks today, and then the wood knock that I heard on Monday
Mm.
was like way over here. and then the two that I heard the day prior were over here. They were pretty much same spot.
Right.
And then the howl was basically, if I drew a line from where I heard the knock and then just drew a straight line back, it kind of sounded like that's the direction that it was coming from, was
Yeah.
in that straight back from the knocks. Is I don't think that, other than solitary, they're not. I believe the one that you hear or see is that's the decoy,
Yeah.
and that the other ones are. I mean, John, I don't know how many stories every of experiences that I've
Mm,
listened to,
sure.
is that how many times people would be in the woods and there's the one in front, but
Mm,
then later on, as the experience is going on,
mm,
all of a sudden they're hearing things to the right, they're hearing things to the left, they're hearing things behind them,
mm.
like they're being closed in on.
Yes.
I think things are done. I think they're very calculated.
Mm,
I think how they think and how they maneuver and manipulate the natural world to benefit them, and how they hunt and how they forage and for their own survival.
agreed. Mm,
And so I always say to myself, it's not the one that you see that's going to get you, is the one that doesn't.
yeah.
And I believe that's that's and it's like always when they're camping.
Mm,
It's like all the encounters that I hear is like, yeah, we heard the one here. Then all of a sudden, one came from the left, and then
mm,
another one came from the right.
mm.
Like they were triangulating onto, but the main focus was on the one that you heard or you saw,
Right.
not the ones that you didn't see. And
Yeah.
they typically were like even closer than the one that you saw. And it's amazing on how that all happens.
Yeah.
And
It's interesting.
it's very interesting. And it's
Makes me think about deer and deer hunting, right?
yeah.
You'll see the mama and the baby deer. You'll see them poking around, eating some grass or something. And they always say, wait, because dad's behind them somewhere watching.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And I
Like, what do you?
and I said I saw about 7 deer today traveling through the Adirondacks, and I did. Two or three jumped across the road. I slowed down, stopped, and I just stared at where they came from, and there was a buck just sitting
You
on the other,
know,
just sitting back in the woods on the
all
other
the
side of the
time,
road. Yeah,
right?
very interesting.
And like I said, to like take hunters. If
Mm,
you're going to go in by yourself, which I don't recommend hunting
yeah.
by yourself, but if you go in with a group of guys,
Mm,
typically a lot of times what you'll do is you'll set up three or four guys
mm-hmm.
on a ridge line or something,
Yep.
and then you'll have other guys that will push, and they're pushing everything towards those guys that are on the ridge line or whatever, or along a field
Yeah.
line or something like that. So
Yep.
they're pushing the prey to the hunters.
That's right.
So I don't think what they do is much different, is any different. I
Right.
think they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Is that they push whatever that the prey, maybe it's deer or
Yeah.
whatever, they're pushing, and they're pushing them towards the other ones
Sure.
where they can get to them.
Agreed. Agreed.
And it's just it's amazing stuff, and it's
It's great.
the more that I listen to everybody's encounters and
Mm-hmm.
experiences, the more I learn. And and of course you can go down that rabbit hole and as to, well, what is Bigfoot?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
then you're getting into the paranormal and
All kinds of stuff. Yeah.
orbs
Yeah.
and UFOs and things like that, which
Yeah.
I can't say yes and I can't say no. I don't know. Nobody knows. But
Mm,
but I think it Sasquatch is a relic hominid, is what I believe it to be.
yeah. I'm with
you
you on
know.
that. I'm with you. Yeah, I think it's a branch of humanoid in some way that survived and they're here, you know. Um that's my thought. So I've done a lot of research and I went down the Neanderthal piece. I'm still with that because I think there's something to it. But but the more like you said, the more research you do, the more you learn. And the more you start to, connect the dots and put the puzzle together and come up with your own theory. So my theory is still in process.
Yeah. I mean, because
Yeah,
it can change. I mean,
yeah,
based on the information that becomes known. Because
right.
it's odd. Because it's like there's you'll get ones that are all gray. People see
Mm-hmm.
ones that are all gray, or
That's
they'll
right.
see black ones,
Yeah.
or they'll see the reddish orangutan kind of colored,
That's right.
uh, and then they'll see the little ones, or
Mm-hmm.
they'll see a female carrying a baby, or they um, some have the cone shaped head, some don't, some have
S-
uh,
Yeah.
uh, or Neanderthal looking faces. I mean, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how many of encounters that I've heard that they said it looked Neanderthal.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, it had its
Mm-hmm.
face looked, or they'll say it looked Native American. You
Yeah.
know,
It's a big one.
so I'm like, well, geez, they're just like us then.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, you're just like us, whether you're Asian or
Mm-hmm.
you're
Yeah. Just
African American or
yep.
you're
Exactly.
Caucasian.
Yep.
The face changes, the color changes. Then you sit there and say,
Agreed.
oh, their skin was gray, or their skin was black, or it was
Mm-hmm.
light in color. I mean, what
Yeah.
can you say
There'd
of
be
this?
different species, different nationalities. I'm with you
Sure.
on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right. Well, we're almost 2.5 hours in, my friend.
Wow, John.
What a great conversation, Scott. And so I'd love to chat with you again, of course, because we could just talk Bigfoot all night.
Oh, we could. We
you
could.
know so
Yeah.
so I plan on keeping in touch. You keep in touch, and I'm sure we can work something out. Maybe we can hop back on. We can hop
Yeah,
back
sure.
on with some other folks, right? I got some other folks like me, Scott, and Dave. Scott's he's had a UFO encounter. Dave's the Bigfoot and Dogman expert. The three of us are going to hop on this weekend too, and just to chat, because they were like, "Well, what's the subject? What are we gonna?" I said, "We're just gonna talk." You
Yeah,
know,
that's all. That's
that's
all.
all.
Just talk.
We're just gonna talk. That's all. So, maybe we could do
What did,
something like that in the future.
what about the dog man thing? Is there any, that's
Uh,
mostly, I think isn't that a lot down
that's
like Tennessee and
yeah. I'm not sure. He's really into that.
like LBL?
I haven't gotten into it. Most recently, I've listened to a few more things. I've watched a couple more things. I'm
Yeah.
starting to become a little bit interested. I saw a post today on social media that showed a bear with mange. It was a picture of
Yeah.
a bear that had mange, and it
Yeah.
looked like a dog, like how people describe Dog Man. And it said
Really?
Dog Man debunked. And I said, "Oh man, I don't
Oh,
know."
really?
Yeah,
Oh, could be.
interesting. Very
Could be.
interesting. I can't wait to tell him about that.
Yeah.
So,
And like,
yeah.
John, if you go to Northampton, go September.
Mm,
If you can do it in September, go September.
I'll do it. Yeah, absolutely. Of
Because,
course.
in fact, if you go, I would go with you.
Sure. Yeah.
I would meet up
Yeah.
with you and I wouldn't bring the dogs. So, and that was a lot of why I didn't really go
Hmm.
around looking for things
Yeah.
because, from what I know, dogs and Bigfoot don't get along too good,
Right. Yeah.
and I really didn't want my dogs being a snack.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't really go looking too much beyond the campsite for things.
Right.
But like if you go back there in September of next year, let me know
Yeah. Of
because
course.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to get into like the NPT or something like that, or you're
Yeah.
looking for somebody to kind of, you're looking for an extra body,
Yeah.
keep me in mind.
Okay. You got it.
I would love to, to go out there with you.
Sounds great. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. September's we'll make that happen next September. That's it. We're locked in. So,
Okay, cool.
but in the meantime, anything you see, you want to chat, whatever, just shoot me a note, stay in touch, and we'll continue this relationship.
Sounds great, John.
All right, man. Well,
All
have a
right.
great evening. Thank you so much. Appreciate you sharing with us.
Well, thank you.
I know
Thank you for
that's
the
that's a
opportunity.
that's a lot. I got the chills a few times. You got me. Ah, man. Woo. But I
Well,
appreciate it,
thank you.
and I'll shoot you a note and let you know when I got everything ready and when it'll be posted,
No,
all that kind of stuff.
it means a lot, John, because you know what? I've held on to two of those things for 40 years,
Yeah.
and it was it's hard when you hold on to something that long and you really can't talk about it,
Right.
and with all of these channels that are coming up and
Hmm.
your channel and everything like that, and more people are doing it. I was like, you know what? And especially what happened to me in
Hmm.
September this year, I'm like, nah, I'm tired of just not saying anything.
Good.
And the, it's not only gonna help the this go further
Yeah.
and hopefully making this thing known,
Yep.
officially,
Yep.
but also to help me because it
Hmm.
allowed me to get something off of my chest. And
Awesome.
so I appreciate that, and I appreciate the time that you gave me to do that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you. All right. Well, enjoy your evening and keep in
Yes,
touch.
thank you, John. Take
All
care.
right.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye bye.